Your home for Kings basketball for over 25 seasons.
Sactown Sports.
The Allen Stiles Show. Do I start the second hour going yes? No, that's only hour one, right?
No, it's only the top of the show.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was practicing it all night yesterday, just yelling yes.
Yes.
Hear you scream. Sorry. I think that was an old thing that Alan did.
It's like there could be a couple meanings to what you just
Hey,
said. Just saying.
Yeah, that's also a little true there. Brenden Nunes joining us, Sactown Sports Insider. Does a little bit for everything. And so kind of diving into a lot. Again, for those of you that don't know, there's a pope been named. An American pope has been named. First American pope taking the name of Pope Leo the 14th. And it's kind of, it's crazy to think out of 200 and plus popes, you know, we still, like Pope Francis was the first. And do you pick a first, or do you pick something that has personal meaning to you? What does that personal meaning mean? All of those things that kind of go in that, but obviously the first American Pope being named today, and change of the guard in the Catholic Church. We won't dive into all that because I don't know a lot of the inside stuff to that. I dive too much into sports that I don't really have too much time for everything else on that front. And again, Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles, and we will have some fun for the next 3 hours. Brenden will be joining us for this entire hour. And so looking at the entire grand scheme of things, we talked a little NBA playoffs. We'll talk some more here with Brenden. We have talked a little bit about the Sacramento Kings. I want to hear your take on this because I opened the show today talking about how quickly the front office has pretty much formed and how quickly we went from, this is the same thing. They hired Doug Christie. This is what we've seen before. Business as usual. Ownership had a say in that. You know, like we went from that last week, quickly kind of turning and going, oh, it's hiring PJ Armstrong. That's a Scott Perry hire. That's a front office change. Like that really happened in a flip of a second. What do you feel about so far BJ Armstrong, obviously Scott Perry, and how that front office is formed, obviously with still some leftover people from the previous regime still around, as I've heard from you, from Chris. I think Chris talked about it yesterday, Watkins. So what is your take a bird's eye view look at this front office currently?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Absolutely.
And I think you're doing great today.
I appreciate it.
Been tuned in. I told you off air that may be the first time I've heard Goran Dragic's name on these airwaves. And I've only been here, 2 years working here, I guess. So, you know, celebrity birthdays feels like maybe a moment where it got snuck in at some point. But no, I think that it's interesting seeing all the changes, obviously, that are going on here. And I had the same reaction as you to the BJ Armstrong announcement specifically. And I feel like it also caters towards Scott Perry's strengths. Everything that everybody mentions is his experience, the connections that he has around the league. BJ Armstrong has been around the NBA for 30 plus years, including being a player, an agent, where I think that very much plays into their favor here as he continues to, you know, repair the reputation somewhat of the Sacramento Kings that I think has been repaired somewhat over the last few years, even if trended in the wrong direction for the two most recent. But Perry put out the Kings in general, and Perry had a quote on adding BJ yesterday when they made the signing official, announcing BJ Armstrong as assistant general manager. And the quote is, BJ has an elite understanding of the game, and his basketball IQ, front office insight, and championship experience will be invaluable as we build towards the future, said general manager Scott Perry. He continues, he's been a trusted advisor to me and many others in the basketball world for years, and I'm confident his perspective and leadership will make a significant impact on our organization. So again, I think that we are leaning into the same strength of having good connections, the same way that Scott Perry is extremely well known for. And to your point, this feels like a Scott Perry hire. They have a podcast that they do together.
Yes.
You know, if we need more confirmation that these guys get along, and obviously that's important because you look back at the previous regime, and when Monty McNair was hired, Wes Wilcox was also a candidate for the head general manager job.
Correct. Yeah.
And Monty gets the main job. They're like, well, we're actually still going to keep Wes. He's just going to be the lead assistant. And, you know, there were talks about that leading to an interesting sort of dynamic between the two of them there. So like seeing this sort of continuity of guys that seem to be on the same page and really identifying a strength. I would say the identity that Scott Perry is saying that he wants to build, Doug Christie saying the same thing. It kind of starts by having a identity in your front office and in your coaching staff. And I think you're getting a strength here with these two guys together.
And you talk about the player agent aspect of this and kind of looking at the grand scheme of things is one of the troubles that anybody here in Sacramento would kick, scream, and yell about would be we have trouble signing big free agents, right? DeMar DeRozan was that guy. I think we kind of put the blinders on, like we covered our eyes and said, man, maybe the scheme might not fit, but dang it, it's DeMar DeRozan. Like, it's going to work. At the same time going, well, you know, every time the ball touches his hand, it stops. And that wasn't Kings basketball for quite some time. Seeing that aspect of it, do you think that might be partly of what maybe Scott Perry might be thinking here is going, hey, look, I'm going to go get someone that is a player agent that has been doing it for a long time, pretty well, I might add, and that understanding of what players are looking for in a franchise, what they're wanting to sign for. You look at Rob Pelinka, right, coming in that same side with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, if you're LeBron James, you're saying Rob Pelinka has done a good enough job because, hey, every time I say I need a center, you keep going and getting more guards or forwards, whatever else, right? We have an issue of, hey, we need forwards, we need centers. Here's another guard. There's another one in that mix. Is that something that might be thought of in this is going, okay, come free agency time, we're going to have a better shot at going at some of maybe not the top tier, maybe the mid to top tier guys that are going to give us a chance because we can speak their language. We know what they're looking for. We know what the idea behind it is. And is obviously an actual well-oiled machine where everybody has one idea, one mindset, one goal, as opposed to potentially what was happening inside the latter front office.
I would definitely say so. You know, BJ Armstrong was part of Wasserman's agency, which is one of the bigger ones in the NBA. And I think it's so much of this is interpersonal that I think people don't realize a lot behind the scenes, understandably so, because we don't get to see it. But having a trust, I mean, again, the Perry quote, about BJ, he's been a trusted advisor to me and many others in the basketball world for years. And that's important. When I'm having a conversation with an agent, if I'm BJ Armstrong, if I'm Scott Perry, if this guy knows me, then he's going to believe what I'm actually saying if I have the track record that backs that up. And it very much seems like these guys do. I still think that I liked hearing Perry say that, hey, this year is going to be about building an identity. And I still think that needs to be the first step in the process before you're really convincing free agents of a higher tier to probably come to Sacramento, because it's like, hey, from the agent perspective, BJ Scott, that all sounds great, but I need to see it actually developed a little bit here first, because there is a history with this organization on that may not always being the case. So I think that it's definitely encouraging. You have a good point with like Rob Pelinka, but I will say the other side of it a little bit is Nico Harrison was an agent for a little while.
And he's going out and getting all those former Nico clients potentially.
He definitely is. He definitely is here. But yeah, I don't know. Take what you want. How much ownership may have been involved in the whole Luka deal and all of that. Funnily enough, Dallas actually made, I thought, a lot of good moves until the most insane trade in NBA history. But I do think, to go back to your question, that it does definitely add a sense of trust from agents around the league that is probably one of the more undervalued and talked about things when it comes to just creating a modern NBA team.
One of my best buddies is a Dallas Maverick fan, and really like decided to become a Dallas Maverick fan because of Luka Doncic, right? And I like he sends me, feels like weekly, like, you know, like just memes and gifs and stuff like that of just hurting life.
Didn't make the transfer to the Lakers.
No.
It's one of those, like, I'm not rooting for the Lakers.
He hates the Lakers.
Yeah,
he absolutely hates the Lakers. But he has been not living any sort of good life right now. And well, the Dallas Mavericks as a franchise, losing season tickets, losing a lot of things. Fire Nico chants constantly, kicking people out because of Fire Nico chants. But Kyle put something in our rundown that intrigues me, and I want to talk to you about, and that is that Domantas Sabonis is a client, right, of Wasserman is what I'm seeing here. And that kind of goes into some of this conversation too. How much did that maybe help the Kings in making sure that Domas, who at the press conference was very clear, saying we need a point guard. Then the memes come out like, well, you've had one and now he's no longer here.
BJ Armstrong is a point guard.
Well, they listened. They listened. So coming back, I want to dive into that aspect of it because Domantas Sabonis could be an anchor of this franchise. I think the question has been asked: is he a guy that can lead you to a championship? I don't know. Is he a guy that can be part of a championship team? I would lean into the answer being yes. But how does the offense function around a guy like Domantas Sabonis? Obviously, it went away from what he was working on under the best in last year to this past season. So we'll talk about that connection a little bit as well. Brenden Nunes will continue joining us through the 11 o'clock hour. We'll talk more Kings as we dive into the BJ Armstrong and King front office into DC and the head coaching and where we're headed. You are listening to the Allen Stiles Show on Sactown Sports 1140.
I'm Ken Korak with your Green and Gold Report, brought to you by Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Well, the A's call-up of last year's first-round pick and fourth selection overall in the draft, Nick Kurtz, is not surprising, but his rise through the A's minor league system is pretty astounding. Kurtz has played in only 32 minor league games, but the numbers are eye-popping. A .336 average, 11 home runs, and 37 RBIs. Comcast Business helps turn today's small businesses into engines of modern business. It's how restaurants become reliably up and running neighborhood favorites. It's how retailers become seamlessly restocking, cyber-securing must-visit shops. And it's how healthcare offices become data-managing caregivers that we all depend on. With reliable connectivity, enhanced cybersecurity, advanced fiber solutions, and Wi-Fi backup, Comcast Business is powering the engine of modern business.
The only station in Sacramento giving you local sports coverage from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Sactown Sports.
Jose Gonzalez with you to 2 o'clock. Then I handed the reins over to the drive guys. Kyle Draper, Kevin Gleason, Brenden Nunes joining me throughout hour number 2. I was so used to when I did my show back in the day, and I have heard people talk about, like, I've never heard this guy on the radio. Well, it's been a year and 5 months since I've been on the radio, and secondly, I wasn't in Sacramento when I was on the radio, and no one should be going out of their way to listen to Fresno, California radio. But aside from that, appreciate all of you for taking the time to join us and get into this conversation. We're going to talk James Harden. I'm going to wait till Chris Watkins joins us, FYI. Yeah. I'm intrigued to hear your guys' take on this, but I kind of want Kyle to set the table on what I commented earlier about BJ Armstrong and his representation and kind of the connection with Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, so obviously it's not the main connection. I think the main connection is BJ Armstrong co-hosted a podcast with Scott Perry, and that's probably why they had the hire that they did. But yeah, BJ Armstrong was an agent for 15 years at Wasserman. They had 11 agents there representing 55 players. If you take the agency as a whole, of their 55 players, if you had to guess which Sacramento King is their highest contract or highest salaried client right now?
It's Domantas Sabonis.
Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah.
Yes. the other interesting note is like at Wasserman, they only have 2 quote unquote max contract guys on their payroll, which, like, for reference, Clutch Sports has 10, CAA, which is the famous sports agency, has 9. So intrinsically, Domantas Sabonis is more valuable to the company, just in the sense that they only have 2 max NBA contract representatives. The other one is Evan Mobley, by the way, which is okay. Interesting.
Vastly different players.
Yeah, I was like, that was not the one I was expecting on it. But
they also have Klay Thompson, who obviously doesn't make as much now, but in the past was a max contract guy. But just intrinsically, Sabonis is more valuable. And Sam Amick talked about on the morning show how at the Kings' last game of the season, it was like Rich Paul was there for Clutch, and Lawrence, who is Sabonis's agent, was there. And it was like a weird, like, hey, all the power brokers are coming together to figure out what exactly is happening.
So kind of going into this, as we look at the connections that are coming together, BJ Armstrong and Scott Perry, Domas, and diving into that with you, Brenden, here, looking at Domas as a franchise guy, obviously right now, because of what is front of mind, and by the way, in the YouTube chat, someone maybe laughed and said, hate to say this, but some Kings fans get happy over any signing. So, it's
fair.
Also, so looking at
some
that,
depth, so it doesn't have to be a max guy to help improve your team.
But when you don't go and sign a guy like Davion, I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But good, keep going. We could just the snowball will continue to roll down. But looking at Domas, understanding he said, I want a point guard. We made the joke, right? BJ Armstrong comes in. How much do you think Domas has a say right now, really, in what is happening inside the front office? Because, and not just front office, let me correct me, inside the franchise. Because as we know, Doug Christie is very close to Domantas Sabonis. And there was a great connection between those two guys. Domas shot the 3 kind of better this year. I think statistically insanely better. I still think there's a lot of question to that. What kind of power does Domas have inside the franchise when the reality is we've only won one time, and that was 2023?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think the answer between last year and this year could be notably different. Like last year, it's no secret Domas wasn't exactly the biggest fan of Mike Brown, but I think that wording could hold a little bit more weight when you already have people in the front office or higher up that are questioning Mike Brown. It's like, all right, well, one of our best players is saying this. Now we have even more of a reason to lean into that. So you kind of wonder how much of it is necessarily of that specifically was Domas is pushing versus Domas just being the one to confirm what people above him were already thinking. And, Sam Amick came on here and talked about how maybe Domas didn't necessarily love the offense they were running towards the end of the year, even though he was a big Doug Christie guy and seemed to be pushing for Doug to get that job. Then it's like, all right, well, you're not really running these DHOs with me. And things change very quickly, I guess would be my point. And while BJ is under an agency that obviously, like Kyle just laid out, Domas is one of their bigger clients. I don't know how much to put into that, to be honest. I don't think it's much in my mind. Again, I think more than anything, it helps sort of these future conversations that could come up rather than I think that Domas is going to be the one to make all these decisions, especially right after a front office change. Like I think that far and away that Scott Perry, BJ Armstrong, that whole staff is going to be the ones that are making the primary decisions for these first couple years. Mm-hmm. Let's see, as some hiccups happen, who may be making decisions further down the line here. But that doesn't mean that they're not consulting Domas in getting his opinion, but I don't think that Domas's opinion should be the end all be all, because you're still trying to figure out what the identity of this team is. And the selfless basketball is what Domas fits into, right? When Scott Perry's laying it as out his identity, but he doesn't really fit the length that he's talking about. He doesn't fit the defensive orientation. So I hear all that stuff and I'm like, all right, where does Domas fit into all this? And I think it's more of a question than anything, but I think that Perry is certainly the one that's going to be making decisions here while you still consult all the players on your roster.
Kind of turning back to BJ Armstrong, for those that maybe don't know him, what would you say is the biggest optimistic side of his now being an assistant general manager for the Sacramento Kings, and maybe one thing that maybe worries you a little bit with him becoming this, because as I looked at his resume, worked as a special assistant to Jerry Krause, right? And all the hate that Jerry got in The Last Dance, which, some of it rightful, but let's all be real, Michael Jordan led the charge on that Last Dance, and he got to control the narrative, as everybody wants to kind of put it together. But Jerry was really good at drafting players, going and really signing guys. Like, he looked at talent and correctly assessed most of the talent. Jerry was a really good guy in those terminologies. Transitioned to a player scout under Jim Paxson, and then obviously getting into being a player agent. So in your estimation, for those listeners and those viewers that maybe sit here and go, I don't even know who the heck BJ Armstrong, which, by the way, if you don't know who BJ Armstrong, come on. But if I don't know him, what is one thing I should be optimistic about, and maybe one thing that I might get a little skeptical about with BJ Armstrong getting into this role?
Yeah, I would say the optimistic side is sort of what we were kind of already flirting around earlier, the 30 years of NBA experience, right? Especially being on that agent side, I think you could see how that could cater a little bit more to an assistant GM, because I think that the other side of your question, the more, what do you worry about, is that he hasn't been in a front office since 2005. Now, you're interacting with front office members all the time. He's been a player agent ever since, like we just talked about, but he hasn't been in a front office. And even when he wasn't an assistant GM, so being a Perry hire is encouraging for the continuity standpoint, but the other side of it, you could be like, well, was there more experienced guys? And I don't honestly really know the answer to that, because there is this agency experience side of that as well. So I think that's where I would say it kind of goes both ways. You have great relationships around the league, you would imagine, but you haven't been in a front office since 2005, while Perry's been here a long time.
That's what I was gonna go into that. But can you then say the opposite is like, well, if I'm Scott Perry, I've been here, I've done that. I got that part. Right? Like, right. The GM aspect of this, I've done for a dang long time. I just need a guy like BJ who understands the player component, who's been closer to that aspect. Like, that would be my pushback to that potential, is like, well, I'm Scott Perry. I don't need him. I don't need to have GM or front office experience. What I need out of him is to do X, Y, and Z. So that's what intrigues me in this, is kind of looking at the grand scheme of it, of going, this front office is kind of shaping out really well. Like, is there a holdout or a holdover, pardon me, as we get closer to break here? Is there a holdover in that front office that intrigues you, that has stayed? Is there anybody right now that you're like, oh, I wasn't sure you were going to stick around, but they have? Or is there it's just kind of been like, wow, they're on the lower side of things, they're not really involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, Phil Jabor was kind of out there at some of the draft workouts. I will say I don't know that necessarily means he will be around. I feel like I remember stories previously of guys being around for these workouts, and I think we just might not be at the point where these contracts are fully up yet. So still a little TBD there.
Maybe early June.
Well, we will see. We will see. But I think that Paul Johnson, a guy that ran their Stockton team for a while and then moved up to the Sacramento level in the recent years, is somebody that's encouraging to me. I thought Stockton did a great job last year. How can you say not, with them getting a championship? But yeah, I mean, encouraging stuff there. And the one other thing I'll say real quick, BJ Armstrong, Scott Perry, both have experience, Chicago, New York, dealing with very involved owners.
Yeah. Yeah, Reinsdorf is involved. I don't know if he's good involved, but he's involved.
It can go either way.
Well, that would open another can of worms. We'll talk about Doug Christie and the Sacramento Kings. What intrigues me about Doug Christie is who stayed and who is now here. Obviously, Mike Woodson now here. How big is that? We'll dive into that next. Brenden Nunes continues with us through the rest of the hour. Chris Watkins will be joining us shortly. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles right here on Sactown Sports 11. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles here until 2 o'clock, then handing it all over to the Drive guys. Kevin Whitey Gleason will be joining us at around 1 o'clock. Casey Pratt joining us at about 12:30. And then we get 30 minutes with these two guys in here who are graciously giving me their time as Frankie Cardicelli decides to take care of Frank Jr.
I'm feeling like we might see him at Sutter Health tomorrow, though.
Sources are telling me that
Yeah.
it's almost definite that Frankie Gardaselli will be at the Yankees series.
So is this going to be baby's first game? Do you guys know
I
about
don't
that?
think he is bringing child.
Yeah, I don't think we're there.
Because it's going to be a hot day,
Yeah,
right? We're
yeah.
getting to 90s here soon.
Is it? I didn't
Do you think you
realize.
require those like baby earmuffs for baseball games? Doesn't quite get as
I
loud,
was
not
gonna say,
quite
at
in
that
like an
park,
enclosed
Yeah,
environment.
it was like 10,000
Yeah, right.
fans.
It depends on what White Sox games. I think you're good. I
Right.
think you're
That's what I was like,
probably fine.
10,000 fans? I don't
Maybe
know.
against the Yankees.
Is
you might be
Aaron Judge going to get a home run? That's the only time.
Yeah,
that
maybe the
stadium
baby
will
should
make
bring a
noise.
hard hat. That's a good point. That's a
True.
really good point. If you're
Yeah.
sitting in the
in a
outfield,
glove?
John,
no, he's gonna mash a ball for sure. He's hitting it into the river.
well, especially if it's going to be that warm. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I'm intrigued, because
Yeah.
obviously early in the season we were seeing all the
It's been a
home
little
runs
windy
and the
too.
Cubs, yeah. So I was like, whoa, okay. And now Fisher's getting his wish, right? Like what he said at the
Yeah.
press conference.
Aaron
Like
Judge
you get,
just
to,
needs
you get
Shohei.
to see guys
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Aaron Judge.
You get to
and
see
Shohei
players on the
Ohtani.
other team.
Very
Yeah.
intimate. Very
Yeah,
intimate.
we're not going to talk about our players, the young guys coming through the ranks. We're going to talk about Aaron Judge. Fresno
Shout out
State
Jacob Wilson.
4 hits yesterday.
And on fire.
Yeah.
Lawrence
It's
Butler.
A's have
Doing
been
well.
such a pleasant surprise, and I say surprise in quotes because I think a lot of people knew that they were going to be a gritty young team, but they've been pleasant to watch and to see. And obviously, like the Mariners kind of dominated the stadium yesterday in a day game. Do you guys? I think that was the last day game for a while.
No, they have 2 of the Yankee games are day games.
2 of the Yankee games. Okay,
Saturday, Sunday, I think are day games.
and then that should be it,
I
right? Because
believe
I'm
so.
like,
yeah.
There's a
Getting
random
close.
Thursday in May against the
How
Angels.
fun. Ooh, okay. That might be. Hopefully
Yeah,
Mike
you want to
Trout's-
watch
Hopefully Mike Trout's okay by then.
company field trip Angels A's
Yeah.
12:30 on a Thursday.
Let's do it. Make it
yeah.
happen.
And now both of you have been to Sutter, right?
Several.
Yeah.
Right, to several games. Now, what has been the most positive thing you guys have seen? I'm a
love that
positive
question.
guy.
I love that
I'm a
question.
positive guy. I tend to try to stay away from the negativity, especially because I can very easily do that with the A's. I'm not a big fan of what they have done in obviously in the
don't know.
past. What would be the most positive?
I don't think I have an answer.
I
It's
just
been
kind of want to
fun.
say like Jacob Wilson.
I
Has
haven't.
it
I mean,
only been
at
the
the
play?
home games, I personally feel like at the games that I've been to, Jacob Wilson. I haven't even seen Mason Miller at the games that I've been to, and
I
I've
haven't
been
either,
probably
actually.
to like 4 to 6 games.
I'm probably about the same. I would say I think Soderstrom has probably hit the
Soderstrom's
best
been
during the
great,
times
yeah.
that I've been there. Like that was more, I guess, very start of the season. Yeah, I mean, I think that when that stadium is full now, typically it's filled with a handful of the other team,
Yeah.
more than a handful
Yeah, I
of the
was
other
like,
team's fans. I do think it's a cool environment.
Yeah.
Like I think the grass is a cool setting. They're definitely, don't get me wrong, it still feels pretty minor league, but I think there is something to the intimateness, even if there is a little bit of a cop out in calling it that. There's something to that. Now, when you get to 7th inning stretch and A's fans don't know what to say at all,
Dude,
it's
that's a great
little bit
shout.
awkward.
Because you can't say Sacramento.
They used to say Oakland.
root for. What do
They
you
used to
say?
say
You can't
Oakland.
say the A's.
Oh,
No.
You can't athletic like
No.
It's just silent.
like
No, you've
it's
heard,
so
we heard
weird.
you
Padres
can't
super loud.
Sacramento, like you can't root for. Boom.
The
So we're just gonna be
A's.
generic, like
You have to say the Athletics first. They made it very
Mm,
clear, with
mm.
the A's is the second name. They're the
I like,
Athletics.
I like. Do you sit there and just go root for the home team? Like, do you
I
just
guess, right, I
generically
guess
go
so.
like home team? Which
See, but this is all happening in real time,
Yeah.
and so nobody's,
This is
Nobody-
also going to
nobody was
sound
coming up with
crazy.
that.
The people
that's a great suggestion.
the people who are listening to the song don't know that home team is what the actual song is.
Probably not either. Yeah.
well, because like I sit here and I go, I'll be very clear and very honest. I have stopped and prevented myself from going to a game until the Braves are in town. Like I
Okay.
want to genuinely experience this as a fan because I'm going to go in there and be decked out of my Brave stuff and I'm going to be like focused
Okay.
on experiencing the entire premise of it. And then I'll do it as a media member and go in and see the kind of stuff. I think if you're in Sacramento, what you're looking at is going, Sacramento is a melting pot of different fans. Outside of being a Kings fan, I think like you talk about the NFL, I've loved the fact that there's so many different
Yep.
fans of teams here. Like there's a Chiefs bar I don't like. But it, like
Kyle.
yeah. I keep shouting him out for some reason. Padres, Chiefs. I don't know why I keep doing that. But I look at it and I go, at least the away fans are getting an experience of 3-4 years to go. I get to watch my favorite team, but then you look at the prices. Like, I can't imagine what the prices are to go watch the New York Yankees. Like, I think the last thing I heard, lounge seats were like $90 or something like that.
I mean, from my understanding, they've actually been pretty cheap and have been getting really cheap. I know the lawn seats they've been doing day of, they release for $25 to go sit in the lawn. That is day of seating. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's been much more of a road venture than anybody really caring about the A's.
So, so let's turn the conversation back to the Sacramento Kings and James Harden. I waited for you. I waited for you. And the reason I waited for you, because I have my sentiment of James Harden, and it obviously, you know, look at his Houston Rockets days and what that has been like. And obviously Allen talked about this. Him and Dave had a back and forth with talking about that in the first hour, had a nice back and forth on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And obviously you see Dave is fully against it. Allen, you know, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like, that guy knows how to kind of look at one side of things and kind of he's a good contrarian. Why are you against it, or why would you consider it? Is the nice open-ended question I want to give you guys, because personally, I'm just going to lay it on the floor and put it out there. I wouldn't consider it. But if making the playoffs is what ownership wants, regardless of what that might look like in 3 years, do you consider it?
I'm pretty much just going to say no. I think that we may all end up being on the same page here. But first off, next year, James Harden has a $36.3 million player option. Curious to see what sort of happens there. Now, if you can get some sort of short-term deal, if there's a DeMar DeRozan for James Harden sort of swap here, like, sure, that makes sense in the short term. But I think my big thing is that I don't think we should be so focused on, like, all right, just how do you make the playoffs next year? You know, Scott Perry's coming out talking about building an identity. And to me, that sounds like the first step in the process to you know, I feel like I get crazy sometimes with this organization, but the goal is a championship, right? Like, not to make the playoffs. And so getting a 35-year-old James Harden, 36 pretty much early in the next year, I think it helps you in the short term, but that's not something that I personally think the Kings are in a position where they need to be making short-sighted moves like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just piggyback off that and say I just think that James Harden at this point in his career isn't the kind of guy who can carry you to playoffs, even if that's what the goal is. Like, James Harden is the second best player on that team at best, like Kawhi Leonard when he's playing, and Kawhi was ridiculous the second half of the season. And let's not forget Norm Powell was incredible the first half of the season. So there's an argument to be made that James Harden is second to third most important player. Zubac also had a fantastic season. Like, you know, it's more just if you're making a big swing like that, like, to me, it's maybe an elevated version of DeMar DeRozan. Like, DeMar got you to the play-in. Maybe James Harden on this team gets you to the first round. But, you know, if we're playing it out, like you said, he's 36 years old. Let's say James Harden does bring you sustainable success for 3 years and you make the playoffs 3 straight years. Well, then what? Like, then James Harden's 39, 40 years old. He's no longer helping your team reach the playoffs. He's making, help me out here, he's making probably
36 going into next year.
That's much better than what I would have thought. But, you know, he's getting paid a ton of money, and you don't have first-round draft, or you don't have, you know, a high first-round draft pick to help you continue to build. So, I mean, even if you get James Harden and it's the best-case scenario, to me it's 3 years, and then you're pretty much back to where you are right now, if not worse.
I think it's a great talking point. I think it's great for us to bring up James Harden, but outside of that, I look at it and I go, wouldn't it be DeMar DeRozan on steroids?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
I mean, it's a
ball
version.
stops.
He's more of a point guard.
Yeah.
And look at the bigs that James Harden works well with. It's these low usage bigs. Now Zubac became a little bit of a different player last year. Yeah, rim runners. And when Zach LaVine gets to the team, Domantas Sabonis talks about, hey, it's an adjustment. This guy needs the ball in his hands a little bit more. James Harden's still one of the best passers in the league, but he's the extreme example of that, to your point.
So, you know, I think it's a great conversation to have. But outside of that, I don't think there's much more to kind of dive into that James Harden aspect because of what you said. I think it's building an identity. What is the identity that the Sacramento Kings want to build. We'll talk about that next, because Doug Christie gets officially, taking the interim tag off. He's the head coach of the Sacramento Kings moving forward. He's someone that obviously bleeds Sacramento through and through. But what is the identity that Doug Christie wants to embody in play style, in who they are, and how they're going to develop, and how they're going to attack? It's that, I think, is one of the biggest questions. We'll talk about that, as well as kind of diving into the NBA playoffs. I want to ask you guys the question I asked everybody else, and it is, who is to blame for the 20-point deficit that has been now surmounted twice by the New York Knicks, heading back to the Madison Square Garden with a 2-0 lead are the New York Knicks. We'll talk about that as well, because I'm very interested in hearing your guys' response. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles, and you can continue listening right here on Sactown Sports 1140. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles. He is on location. He's in Chicago. I know that. He just posted a video about him walking around in the Windy City. Have you guys been to Chicago?
I've not.
No, I need to make my way out there.
I haven't either, but like my dad, he made a venture out to Chicago. He's like, yeah, that wind's no joke. He's like, it's not fun to kind of interact with. And so just shouting out Allen out there in Chicago, and looking at all the crazy things he's going to be doing out there. He's going to have many a stories.
Am I too touristy for wanting to go for St. Patrick's Day when the river turns green?
No, that's what I've heard is definitely the time to go.
Okay.
It's like the city comes alive, and it's a great time. My friend just was telling me the other day that there's like 4-month window pretty much where you can go and not have to worry about like weather. Besides that, it's
Gotcha.
hey man, like you might try and be there for 3 days, you're gonna be there for 5 to 7 days. Like,
What is your guy? What would a bucket list stadium is for you guys? That just popped in my head right now, because like I look around, Major League Baseball, NFL. Like NFL feels like a lot of obviously stadiums have become cookie cutter. Then you kind of get a little bit of a difference. I think in Minneapolis, that's not cookie cutter. That's very different and very cool. I want to go there. Yeah. But like you look at least Major League Baseball, a lot of different parks, a lot of different to it. NBA arenas, there's a toss up in what you're going to do. Is there anything bucket list for you guys that you're like, I have to go to this arena, stadium, place?
I would like to say the Garden, Madison Square Garden, but kind of to your point, TD? Like it does feel like, oh no, definitely not TD. To your point, it kind of feels like there's bigger venues out there. US Bank seems great in Minnesota. Maybe go with the soccer stadium, maybe like the Bernabeu, something like that.
Okay.
Go see Camp Nou. That might be cool to see. Barcelona game.
Yeah, I think didn't the Bernabeu just have a new, like they just fixed the stadium?
I believe so. Yeah, they just made like a massive renovation to it. Yeah,
it's going to be a World Cup venue in 2030.
Wow. So, okay. Yeah.
I'm like looking ahead.
Makes sense. Yeah. Perfect excuse.
But for me, I would, if I'm going soccer, obviously I would say Estadio Azteca. I'm like,
sure.
Man, I have never been there.
Yeah.
It's 100 and like
what is it like?
100 and it used to be 110. Now they've dropped it. It's like 85. Thousand with all the renovations. Only 85,000.
Yeah.
Now
Rose Bowl is crazy like that too.
I've never been to the Rose Bowl.
You can fit a ton of people.
Parade.
Yeah, I went to
in the parade
USA Mexico game, soccer game at. It was crazy. It was absolutely nuts at the Rose Bowl.
I thought you said in the parade. I'm like,
no,
you in the band?
That's a nice two truths for a lie. I was in the Rose Bowl
made
parade.
of roses.
So diving into the Sacramento Kings and the coaching staff, DC is now the official coach. What is in your guys' mind the identity that he wants to implement? Because I feel like the last 2.5 years, 3 years, we've seen like 3 different identities. Like in the Beam Team 2023, we saw one identity. The year I got here, 2023, 2024, we felt like that went away. It wasn't as let's shoot it, let's move the ball as quickly. And then this year, obviously, every time the ball touched DeMar DeRozan's hands, it died. You had Zach LaVine standing in the corner for a bit. Obviously, there was always injuries with De'Aaron Fox and some of these guys never being able to kind of all be healthy at the exact same time, which, by the way, I feel like we didn't talk about enough in the conversation leading up to the trade. It's like these guys didn't really have that much time playing together.
Yeah.
What do you guys think DC's identity is and what he's going to want to implement? Because obviously it's the physicality aspect and, it's the the face, right? That got pictured everywhere, and the salts and what he does right before the game gets going. What is the identity of the Sacramento Kings 2025, 2026? And obviously, I'm not going to hold you to it in October when we have a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal identity and what you have as a vision right now could definitely change as you realize, oh, hey, this guy's available, and maybe we want to pivot to something else as they're still trying to sort of figure out what exactly that is. But as Perry said it, and and Christie really echoed, it's about toughness. It's a defensive orientation. I don't know how. I just combined it.
That was incredible. I was like, Eki? Like, what is that coming from?
And then Christie.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
But they mentioned toughness, a defensive orientation, playing hard and playing together. To me, I mean, I think you can go look at the early 2000 Kings and their offensive identity. That continuity and the free-flowingness. Domas obviously having similarities to Weber, Vlade. And then defensively, exactly what you were saying, just how you imagine Doug Christie. I think that, sure, the length, athleticism, that all sounds great. Honestly, I feel like you hear that from every single person because that is what the league is nowadays. But identity-wise, I think it's more about playing tough, being the first after 50-50 balls like you saw Doug Christie be throughout his career.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I would say. I think Doug Christie, and I think it's not uncommon, but he's probably looking for a group, a team of Doug Christies, right? Of people who play like Doug Christie used to play. Defensive minded. I think if you could give two traits, I think you would probably pick defensive minded and a playmaker, pretty much like Brenden said. Like, he's looking for people to play like how those early 2000s Kings played, move the ball. Of course, if you could add a third, I would say shooting, but then it starts to get into, well, yeah. So Doug Christie's looking for a guy who can pass, shoot, play defense,
6'10",
dribble the ball, be 6'10". If we could just have as many of those guys as possible, which isn't a bad strategy. I think that's kind of what they're looking for, is just people who really fit the mentality of, because I do think, especially after hearing, Doug all those years on the radio, like, I just think he really cares more so about the mentality of people than about your actual skills and traits. Like, it's the NBA, everybody's crazy talented. You could fit guys into roles if they're talented enough. I think he's more so looking for guys who have the right headspace, and I think defense and playmaking both are a very specific type of person that you have to be to dedicate yourself to sharing the ball and to the defensive end, which usually gets no glamour.
Was this previous team the least Sacramento style team?
Least Doug Christie style, for sure. I mean, it's been very Sacramento. It's actually been one of the most Sacramento identity teams we've ever seen. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, no. I mean, yeah, it was completely different than what, to your point, like what it seems like they're looking for. And to your initial question too, like, there's a question of, what does Doug want this team to be versus what this team is going to be next year also. Like, I don't know how much they can really get to their final destination before maybe getting some more hiccups in the road to get there. Because frankly, Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis, you can throw Malik Monk in there. Yeah. None of those, DeMar DeRozan, none of those guys fit what we're talking about. I mean, all of those three guards are score first guys who don't play defense. And then Brenden already laid out why Sabonis doesn't really fit into that. Like, I think it's going to take some time, but I think eventually, maybe 2-3 years down the line. And that's why I think that, I don't want to say the writing's on the wall for a lot of those star players, but it does feel like the identity just doesn't match.
One of the things I remember, and I might be misremembering this, but Scott Perry, new general manager of the Sacramento Kings, said unity in thought. And do you think that this is something that obviously we're seeing very clearly, Doug Christie and Scott Perry, knowing that there is unity in thought of this is what we're going to do?
Diversity of thought, unity of purpose.
That's what it is. Yes. So that's the intriguing part is how are those two guys going to combine to want to put this team together? That's what intrigues me. Mike Woodson, associate head coach, he gets announced. I know some people were afraid that bringing in a guy with head coaching experience was maybe going to drown out Doug Christie's voice a bit. I feel like this might be the perfect guy to come in. Like, Indiana didn't have success there, obviously has been with the New York Knicks. I feel like this might be the guy to sit behind Doug Christie and really help him get to becoming the head coach he should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think typically when you have a head coach that's either very defensive focused or offensive on the other end, you want a lead assistant that is going to play the other side of that. And I think that that's what we're getting here. Like Jay Triano was Mike Brown's complement. And now you have Mike Woodson being Doug Christie's complement here. Mike Woodson, from my understanding, known for sort of more of his spacing and the passing ball movement that's going on and more of an offensive focus during his time, and having all that head coaching experience is obviously something that Doug definitely needs on his staff, a guy that, maybe can be drawn up some sideline plays and things like that. So Doug doesn't have to do every single aspect of all this. But yeah, I mean, I think that it is interesting to see, it feels like Woodson covering up some of Christie's understandable weaknesses with a little bit less experience and being more of a defensive guy.
Chris, kind of looking and changing the question for you a little bit. Barbosa remaining on the staff. Mm-hmm. How much do you think? How much do you think Barbosa staying on the staff, and how this rounds out outside of Mike Woodson? Why do you keep Barbosa? What is it that he brings to the table that he should be on the staff?
Yeah, I mean, we know that it's a person Doug Christie trusts, which does seem to be a common theme here. Is as we talk about BJ Armstrong and why he's in that position, I think a big reason why Barbosa was one of the first people announced is because he worked out with Sabonis and Doug throughout these summers, and we just know that they have a really close relationship. And obviously, Barbosa had a close relationship with Mike Brown too. Mike Brown's the one who brought him on initially to the staff because of their time in Golden State together. But I think that they've clearly grown close together. They're ex-players, both of them. And even though it's very clear that there was some division going on and people pick sides and you're a Mike Brown guy or you're just a Kings guy, it does seem like Barbosa was maybe the one that was able to kind of blur those lines the most, because they seem to have that ex-player relationship. And who knows? I mean, we don't know the ins and outs of their relationship, but it seems like that's definitely a key reason why.
Was that a pun? Blur?
No, actually, no. It didn't even cross my mind.
Good one.
Yeah, not bad.
Chris will stay with us through the top of the hour. Brenden, appreciate you taking the time. Now, in 20 seconds, who do you blame for the Celtics meltdown?
Dude, okay. I still think they're gonna win the series, and don't get me wrong. There's a moment or two where you need to drive, but they're not going to go 25 of 100 from three.
Can Jason Tatum stop taking setback threes?
Okay,
please,
yeah. He's being a little crazy. Don't get me wrong. But it's a great case test for a team that's just like, hey, we're living and dying by the three, and they died in the first two games.
Don't blame Joe Mads.
All right, we'll take you to the top of the hour. We'll continue when we come back. Allen Stiles Show on Sactown Sports 1140. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles today and having some fun through a couple of hours already here on a beautiful Thursday. Now afternoon, it's currently 77 degrees. It's nice, it's beautiful, it's sunny. 92, and 92, and then we drop into the 70s this weekend. So that should be.
How's the Sacramento weather been treating you?
It's 10 times better to me than Fresno. I'm heading back to
Less
Fresno.
Dry here.
You get a nice wind. Like you get a breeze. Like sometimes I walk out and I'm like, it's supposed to be 90. Why does the wind look like it's hitting 15
Especially
miles per hour?
Week. Yeah, it's been crazy.
But I'm going back to Fresno. 98 degrees this weekend in Fresno. So and the heat sits. It just sits on you. Like at night you're like, oh, it's 75. It's not. It doesn't feel good. And it's a dry heat. I don't care about the dry heat. Chris Watkins continues with us to about 12:30, and then we go to Casey Pratt. And just again, reminding you guys, make sure to always visit our website, sacktownsports.com. Make sure that you are also checking out our YouTube page, Instagram page, and all the things that go with it. We keep you as updated gets as well. And for those of you that don't know, we have a new pope. Yeah, well, those of you that are in the Catholic religion have a pope.
The world has a pope.
That's right.
Let me be clear on that one. But the first American pope as well, and Leo the 14th. Just for some of you that don't know on that, and apparently he is a dual citizen, U.S. and Peruvian. So
heard he's from Chicago, which is cool. I heard he graduated from Villanova. So with the Knicks' success, shout out Villanova. I guess getting tons of wins these days.
Yeah, I was about to make a bad joke, so I'll go.
I don't think Allen's a fan of Villanova either. I think that's a Temple rival.
I believe that would.
I think we were talking.
That's why he doesn't like the Knicks.
Can't wait to Monday. You better hear his thoughts about the new Pope. Stay tuned. That's a tease for you.
Oh my goodness. So with that, just also wanted to remind every single one of you as well, coming up the drive guys at 2:00. And with that, I put Brenden on the spot there at the end and just kind of said, 20 seconds, tell me about the Boston Celtics demise. But here we have a chance to kind of extend that conversation. I was talking about Joe Mazzulla and what I may be considering in his blame on that side of things. 2 games in a row that you give 20-point leads up. Now, if you're the Knicks, could you get a little too confident where you're like, yeah, well, okay, we can be down 20.
Especially 2
That's
at
fine.
home now, you know?
Or do you look at it and go, if you're the Celtics, you go, look, if we just can close out a game, we're 2-0. Right? Like, we got to win 4. So who do you blame the most? Because I look at Jason Tatum went 5 of 19, if I remember this correctly. Yesterday we're talking during the break about that final play and what he's looked like. Obviously, they haven't had a healthy Porzingis. He's been limited in minutes. How that team has looked. Who would Chris Watkins place blame if you are in Boston media right now yelling about this team being down 2-0?
I tend to blame the players more than I blame the coaching. Like Joe Mazzulla also coached them well enough to get up 20. You could argue the same for the players. They played well enough to get you up 20. But I think at some point it's like, what does the coach have to say to tell you to play defense, to stop, granted, maybe you could argue it is in their scheme. Maybe, obviously Boston historically takes an insane amount of threes. Like, obviously that is Joe Mazzulla directly telling them that we want to weaponize that. But I think at some point, like, you have Drew Holiday out there. You have Al Horford out there. I don't think actually Al was playing a ton yesterday because Porzingis was playing. Yeah. But the bigger point is you have veterans. You have guys. I mean, forget those older guys. Like, you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, who both won NBA championships last year. They should know how to settle the storm. That is supposed to be what championship pedigree is that you've learned, oh, we've been through all this. We know we now have the resolve to get through something like this and not have something like this. This should be happening for us, not against us, right? If you're the NBA champions, especially the former defending ones, you should be the one giving or getting 20-point comebacks, not giving them up at home. So I blame the players more so than the coaching. Obviously, the coaching can change. You can make adjustments and things like that. But I think when you're losing by 20 points at some point, it's like, you got to stop the guy in front of you, right? Like, and I will say there were a couple times where I was like, Jalen Brunson, I know Drew Holiday, one of the best perimeter defenders, but can we get some size on him? Like, you have Jaylen Brown, you have Jason Tatum, both incredibly athletic, incredibly long. Jalen Brunson's barely 6 feet tall. Like, can you, like, that's maybe where I start to point at Mazzulla a little bit, but I just in general blame the players more.
One of the interesting aspects of this is, like, you look at the Knicks and you go, they're spreading this out pretty well. Like, you have not had, like, Jalen Brunson has obviously finished games excellently well. And you look at the point, Bridges, 14 points, Cat, 21, Brunson, 17, Josh Hart led with 23. Yeah. So you look at it, you go, okay, they're spreading the wealth really well. And on the Boston Celtics side, you just had Jason Tatum play 42 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, he's playing a brunt of this. They're in a tight 3-man rotation, which obviously always happens once you get to the NBA playoffs. But I look at Jason Tatum and I go, my man, we're coming off of 2024 Olympics.
Yeah.
Where you don't play, right? Yeah. And a lot was made out of, well, he's not, he's a star. He's not a star. He deserves to be in it. He doesn't deserve to be in it. You're proving the haters right in this series. Like you're looking at this and going,
a lot of missed open threes.
You're not taking the right opportunities. Like, you're not going, hey, Steph Curry is right. Like, Kevin Durant, LeBron James going, hey, Steph, go and make this 3. Like, obviously that in the Olympics and Steph being able to bail out Team USA. But if you're Jason Tatum, wasn't this supposed to be your revenge playoffs?
Yeah. Like, I mean, you didn't win MVP last year either. Got something to prove,
also,
right?
Yeah, also on that front. So, like, I I just not a fan of Missoula's press conferences is why I have a little bit of a.
I love me a psycho. I love me a good psycho. Controlled. He's a coach. I don't like psychos out in the wild, but I like my coaches a little crazy, a little screw loose.
He said, "Let me correct the audio."
Yeah,
really quick.
I don't just casually condone for psychotic behavior,
but looking at that, and Kyle said the exact same thing earlier, by the way. But looking at that, I sit here and I go, I'm blaming Jason Tatum, not because of, like, I can blame him because of his play, yes, but he's supposed to be the one showing the leadership.
100%.
Like, he should be the one nailing this down. We need a bucket. I'm going to make the right play. I'm going to make the right move. And let's talk about that final kind of sequences.
Yeah.
Like, there was a moment where I go, okay, he's going to shoot this. He's kind of open. He has the moment, and then he doesn't. And I'm like, earlier in that game, you're probably shooting that, and then bad pass, Nick steal, game over, ball game. What was your take on that final stretch there where the Celtics, all they needed to do was nail it down, and they just couldn't shut the door?
I mean, they were ice cold. I think it was Kevin Harlan on the broadcast yesterday, and Reggie Miller pointed out that none of the Celtics had any rhythm. Like as the Knicks were on, I think it was a 21-2 run. Obviously, like the Celtics had only scored 2 points in the last, I think it was like 6 minutes. Yeah, it was an incredible amount of like game time that they hadn't scored a point. And so, it's just not, you could argue that it's a domino effect. Like, you're not setting yourself up, 3 minutes ago, setting yourself up for now, like trying to get easier shots. Why are they taking step backs when they're still up 8? Those kind of things. And I mean, it just feels like, like he just didn't seize the moment. Like, and the more and more I think about Jason Tatum and his legacy, and it is a really it feels like it's perfect for sports radio because he won a championship, but he didn't win the finals MVP. He is a superstar, but he's really not. Like, as we talk about, the great debate of who's going to be the one to take the mantle from LeBron and Steph, like, it probably should be Jason Tatum. That's most obvious, but it feels like guys like Anthony Edwards, John Morant's had his hat, thrown his name into the hat of that conversation. Like, it just, to me, feels like Jason Tatum, for whatever reason, isn't him. Like, if to keep it frank, like, it feels like he's missing that right? Like, we talk about, Kobe Bryant you could talk about his legacy. You could talk about whether it's overinflated, whether he's actually underrated, whatever it is. And, there's the stat of he's actually not that great in clutch situations, but he always wanted the moment. He demanded the moment. I would say Kobe maximized the most out of his potential. And I use Kobe because Jason Tatum frames his entire life around Kobe. It doesn't feel like – it feels like he's doing an imitation. It doesn't feel like – and maybe this is classic sports talk radio – it doesn't feel like he just has it in him to capitalize on those moments. He doesn't have – again, he's not him. He doesn't have that aura that really feels like this is a guy that we should be recognizing is special.
Going back to, I believe the Netflix thing was starting 5. And seeing and going, okay, like, you can see this guy wants it. Yeah. He has a work ethic, and no one ever talks about that aspect of it for him. But I go here. You work for, like, that's what you play for. You play to be in these moments to, like, and I get making the right play should always be top of mind. Making the right play for the team's success should always come first. Obviously, we're talking about Kobe. Sometimes to his detriment, he's like, I'm going to have it.
But he was like,
regardless of what it is,
yeah.
I'm him. Like, to your point, with Jason Tatum, I feel like if it ends up in his hands, he'll take the shot. But really, he's looking at who can I give this to really to nail this.
Yeah. Again, like, I think a step back jumper is a passive shot. Like, that is telling me, I don't think I can take you to the hole. I don't think I have a move that I just know I can overpower you or overwill you, or I just know that this is my spot. Like, him taking a step back jumper in those situations kind of tells me that he's just like, I know I can shoot, and, like, there's a chance this thing goes in, and that's what I'm going to live off of. Not, I am a bigger, stronger, better, more athletic player than you. I know I can take you. It just doesn't feel like those moments exist for Jason Tatum. Not that I've seen.
No, if you're a top 5 guy, top 5 player, you're going to demonstrate that down the stretch. You're going to bring your will. at that exact same time, we look across and we talk about a guy like Jalen Brunson, where you're like, can you make a switch?
Undeniable.
Can you put someone else on? He just does it.
He's him.
He gets it done.
Yeah.
And you talk about the Dallas Mavericks and every wrong move they have made.
Ooh,
like,
yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah, those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, especially here in Sacramento, watching Tyrese and Davion and Buddy cooking the playoffs. But you look at Dallas and you're like, I mean, that's a different level of bad fumbling.
Oh, you could have had you could have had Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic on the same team, and then you
keep Porzingis on there too.
And Porzingis, and then you go into what you just said and you go, well, you could have had De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton on the same team.
Yeah,
you can't play together, right?
Oops,
got to figure it out. But with that, let's dive into the Golden State Warriors a little bit here and their series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Looking at them. Steph Curry out.
Yeah.
Like that. You see Jimmy Butler, like if you saw that video of him on the sideline, like looking down, and Steve Kerr comes over and just like, it's all right.
Yeah.
Like, you're good. You're fine. And he's like he's gone. Like he exhaustion to that max point, in which, by the way, talks about being him. Like that dude, even to that point, was still helping carrying that team. Golden State Warriors, Minnesota Timberwolves. As you look at that, this is the moment for Ant, right?
Has to be, yeah. I mean, it looks like it looks like it's potentially lined up for this is like the Ant season, right? Like this is maybe obviously still has to get through potentially OKC. Maybe I'll still give Denver a little bit of a chance, but to me, it feels like we're lining up for Anthony Edwards to really, stake his claim in this league, like 2 straight Western Conference Finals appearances, he didn't make it last year, almost made it last year. I think that they definitely have a great chance to kind of, as Ant has kind of been mocked to Michael Jordan, like he's got a little bit of a chance here, really, really early in his career to get a finals appearance. And who knows, you just got to make it. We see Boston looks like they're struggling. I don't think Indiana's a huge threat to Anthony Edwards in the T-Wolves. And who knows if it's the Knicks too, like we'll see.
We talked about who is him, and Ant went into that Olympic roster, and everybody walked in and was like, I'm him. It's like, I don't care, give me the ball over everybody.
Told LeBron James to tell Barack Obama, tell this man I'm the truth.
And so we talk about Jason Tatum and Anthony Edwards. We'll dive into that a little bit more with Golden State as well. Let's talk a little Sak State.
I got a question.
Chris has something that he wants to come up with, so we'll talk a lot more. Chris keeps with us here until 12:30. Then Casey Pratt. You are listening to the Allen Stiles Show on Sactown Sports 11. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles here until 2 o'clock. Then we hand it over to the Drive guys, who will take it all the way to 6 o'clock on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Nice sunny outside, a little bit of a wind. It's the days that when you sit in here for 4 hours, you're like, I'm a little jealous.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day.
This little window here that you can peek out and maybe,
if I get up. Yeah. If I get up, I can go peek
you're
over
explaining my entire life.
Yeah.
I sit in a windowless room for 6.5 hours every day.
Kyle looks at a window through another window. Like you are 2 windows away from
It's
outside.
Technically 3 because that one's
That's
double
true.
pane.
Yeah, and I think this one is too.
So I have to look through 4 windows to see the light for 6.5 hours a day.
It's the life
There's a
we
metaphor
live.
in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's the life we live in order to be in radio. Yeah, it's
a glamorous life.
It's a beautiful life. It's a great life.
I am surely just swimming in all of the amazing accomplishments of my life.
I thought you were going to say in all the dough.
No.
Which, that's a different conversation, different
I
time.
can't say that in front of my boss.
Well,
it might be the perfect moment to say that in front of your boss. With that, someone in the chat, actually Manny in the chat, always shout out Manny, always in here and chatting with us. He says Ant over Tatum. Ant, Tatum.
There's for sure a
Signed
conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think
maybe that's a who is him conversation, but talent-wise, a different conversation.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it's I mean, you could also argue it's just like pick your favorite ice cream on that one. Like it's the different styles. They're both. I mean, yeah, you're arguing like the 7th best player versus like the 5th best player. At that point, it gets pretty nitpicky.
Yeah, that is pretty nitpicky. And then someone else in the chat said, is Tatum this generation's Tim Duncan? And I think that was directed at you.
Yeah, that was definitely directed at me, and he could not be more opposite. Besides their stoicness, I will say Jason Tatum is as boring as Tim Duncan.
He also adds, but healthier.
No. Shout out Jason Tatum actually has stayed relatively healthy throughout his career, but no, I will not concede any sort of.
Tim Duncan won 2 MVPs.
Yeah. Did he? It feels like he should have won more.
Yeah. Like Tim Duncan is one of the 10 best players ever.
So disrespectful.
I like it. I like Tim Duncan. I love that San Antonio Spurs. As someone that maybe was just not as into NBA, like the NBA in that time frame, those guys were like Manu and Tony Parker. Like Manu made me like basketball a little bit, like the way, the Euro and what he did with that. Like, I'm not very athletic when I'm on the court. I'm
not very practical basketball.
Exactly.
Sure,
Sometimes I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna do this and emulate. I'm not Kyle Ledbetter good.
Yeah, you can't just rise above.
No, I was out there yesterday.
Really?
Had a couple good runs.
We're out.
You Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or at 10th and P. Yeah.
See, I've thought
more
about
so dangerous in terms of that's where the real ballers.
Real hoopers. I was running the court over there.
Never mind. I'm out. I was about to say, you should invite. I'm out. I get hurt just walking up the stairs here in the building. I'm not gonna be going out there and hitting real bodies out there.
No, they get runs at Roosevelt Park downtown for sure.
And so,
especially at lunch, like this time right now is like peak Roosevelt Park run. Sorry, Kyle. I know you're missing your runs right now.
Here I am, just in a windowless room.
Meanwhile,
when I could be out there,
in beautiful 77 degree weather,
just taking down state workers at their lunch.
I could be
guys in suits.
I could be up there hitting 30-foot threes, and instead I'm in a windowless room for 7 hours. This is hour 5, just for people keeping track at home.
Oh my goodness! With that being said, Golden State and Minnesota. That series really intrigues me because as you look at the other one in the Western Conference, you go, well, OKC obviously just dominated the heck out of Denver. And I said it earlier. I'm like, if you would have told me going back to Denver, this series would be tied 1-1, I would feel confident for the Denver Nuggets. Right. But the reality is I feel quite the opposite going, okay, he just got, destroyed on the road. It looks like OKC is going to be the team coming out of that series.
Yeah.
Expecting it to happen. Now, if Joker decides to not foul out in the third quarter, maybe
they talk about that elevation a lot.
It affects some people. Aside from that, no Steph Curry for the Golden State Warriors. Can Jimmy Butler will this team in this series? Can he help them at least weather the storm as Steph Curry comes back? Because one of the crazy things that I saw in the Shams tweet was like no timetable because it's his first injury of this nature. And I'm like, well, there's still technically a timetable. Like usually it's 7 to 10 days depending on what kind of strain, how bad the strain is. But aside from that,
that's interesting.
When he says that, I go, is that them leaving it out there to make his grand return right after this game? It's like, he's healthy, he's fine, let's go. Can Jimmy Butler be that guy? Pods, who needs to be the biggest one to step up in this series? Is like Draymond Green going to randomly show up and show out? Like, what is happening for Golden State?
I hate to say it, but it's Buddy Hield continuing to go crazy. Like that's their chance. Like Jimmy can definitely keep them up to an extent, but the problem and the fear I think with Golden State this entire playoff series has been, and it was exposed a little bit in the Rocket series. If Jimmy and Steph aren't getting you 60 points combined, like where are the rest of the points coming from? And they've gotten fortunate, lucky, opportunistic, whatever you want to call it. Like Buddy has definitely been there with some 20, and I think he had a 30-point game. Like I think Pods has had a game or two where he's been effective. Moody has had a game where he made some impact scoring wise, and I think that's their best hope, but I don't know if they have the scoring punch. They're going to have to be a completely different team. They have to lean into the defense, and to Buddy's credit, he's been great, or really solid defensively so far for Golden State this entire playoffs. that has to continue. I think that's really the only way that Golden State can continue to compete in this series is just by making it a bloodbath. I'm talking, early 2000s, late 90s NBA type, first one to 92 wins type games.
What intrigues me about their rotation is I said it earlier, and I was like, usually playoff teams keep a tight 3-4 man rotation. As I was looking and preparing, one of the things I noticed was that there were 7 guys that came off the bench for the Warriors in the win. Yeah. Does that benefit them? Knowing that, hey, at least there's the bench has been playing minutes, and it's not been these 3 only guys that have been going out and getting some game time. Yeah, I mean, it's a benefit in terms of it shows Steve Kerr has some trust in them, but I don't know if I would feel great about Pat Spencer determining my playoff health. Like, I don't know if they really want to rely on some of those lesser guys. The reason why you typically cut the bench is just because you don't, like, those guys are such random variables, and you can't have random in a playoff series. Yeah. You need to try and have as precise of an outcome as you can. And I just feel like that's a dangerous game to play, but it for sure can definitely be something that Minnesota's just not planning for. And before we hit the break, Sak State. What do you want to ask? I am curious your thoughts as someone who was really entrenched in Fresno State. I feel like, in my question that I've been workshopping for these past couple months is, what is the benefit in what I see Sak State potentially just being Fresno State? Like, I think we're talking about Sak State here growing exponentially for sure, but we're talking if they have Derek and David Carr, 2 number 1 picks in the end, or 2 first, Derek Carr barely a second round pick. You have Paul George, you have Aaron Judge. To me, if Sak State gets to that level, that's like a massive win. Mm-hmm. I don't know how, I don't want to say beneficial, but like, I just don't know what if that's really the result. That if you were to tell Sak State right now that that's about as good as it gets, is that what they're aiming for? It's more just, I don't really understand where they're trying to go. Are they trying to be a top 25 team? And I'm just more so curious your perspective as someone who is so entrenched in that kind of market. And I know Fresno State runs Fresno in terms of content, but I don't know if, we talk about how Sacramento's a one trick pony town and all that stuff, but I don't know how much of an appetite there will be for a team that might have a couple years of really crazy success or really great athletes, but not really, Fresno State is, 500 some years. And I don't know how beneficial that will be to Sacramento. You talk about guys like a Pat Hill, a guy like Jeff Tedford, legendary dudes that have really gone through Fresno State and really held on the football side of things. Jerry Tarkanian on the basketball side of things, what he did with that program. Obviously, Margie Wright in softball, kind of how they've elevated a lot of things. Batesville winning a national championship as well for Fresno State baseball. I look at it in the grand scheme of things. I go, and I literally just talked to Jason Ross about this as well, which was, I think I sat here and I said, if Sak State goes independent, which I think is what they should do, they should not go into the Mountain West. They should not go into the Pac-12, because you're opening a line to say, we play the likes of Oregon constantly. Washington, and I'm talking about the Big Ten teams, not Oregon State and Washington State. You can play UCLA, USC, because they are going to need West Coast games in order to not have to travel drastically, all the way to Michigan and Ohio and Rutgers in New York and going to play those games. That, I think, is going to be the biggest beneficial factor for them on the football landscape of things. Yeah. You have to upgrade facilities ASAP, because that's what's dragging Fresno State backwards, right? Fresno State as a football power can consistently be winning, but Fresno State is what they wish Fresno State, Boise State is what Fresno State wishes they could be. Right. And they should have been, because they were the ones who had the funds. Right. At the same time, I think Sak State can aim higher than Fresno State. Interesting. And I've said this privately to some people in Fresno, and Kyle's giving me the eye to take the break here. But I've said this to people in Fresno. You need to worry, because if Sak State gets this right, they will leapfrog you, because Sacramento is a better place to. Look, I love Fresno, and I will always be a Fresno kid. I will always think about being back in Fresno. But Sacramento is a better place to be if you're an athlete. You're a college kid too. Perhaps, So that, I think, is on the grand scheme of things. I'll keep a little bit. I'll answer more on the other side, so Kyle can stop yelling at me.
It's a bold strategy, Kyle. Bold strategy.
So we'll talk with Casey Pratt as well coming up next, but I'll answer that even with Casey. Casey knows that. Appreciate it, Chris, as always.
Thank you for helping me get closer to an answer.
No, absolutely. We'll continue next. Jose Gonzalez filling in for Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports 1140.
On the move.